I believe that like why psychology is way behind every other technological field, in the year 2022 is because when humans get close to actually seeing themselves, they're like, never mind, and they turn right around.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
When you start pointing out the blind spots, they're like, whoa, but that's really hard, really painful. I don't like that. But it's like, yeah, then if you know what your blind spots are, then this weird invisible hand that keeps slapping you in the back of the head, which is actually something that you set in motion, then you end up not feeling like a victim.
The big hormone Enneagram.
Hi, I'm John Lukovich, sexual self-pres 4-5 wing 458 trifix.
Hi, I'm David Gray, self-pres sexual 9-1 974 trifix.
What up? It's Emeka. I'm an 8-wing 7, sexual self-pres 854 fixes.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I am a self-pres social 3, wing 4, with a 369 trifix. If you like our podcast, guys, make sure you go like and subscribe on the Apple Podcast app. And if you really like us, you should definitely leave us a review.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Big Hormone Enneagram Show. Today, I'm here with David, John, Joseph, and myself, of course, and our special guest, Dave Powers of Objective Personality. We also, we refer to it as OPS for short. So Dave is one of the co-founders of OPS with his wife, Shan. And for more information about their system, you can go to their website, objectivepersonality.com. We've discussed this before on a previous episode a couple months ago where we did a rough intro, just sort of like going over the basic concepts, basically John grilling me, and I'm fucking trying to explain the best as I could. As I'm a novice in this system, and we discovered it about 6 months or 8 months ago when Ikram, who is a friend of you guys's, she introduced this system to David, who then infected all of us with it, and so we've been tinkering and studying with it for the last 8 months, and so we were hoping that we would get a chance to eventually talk to you and delve into the, because a lot of people are interested in what the Enneagram has to offer when you're looking at MBTI, or what the overlap between those systems are. And if for the first time, it seems like the way that you guys have been approaching MBTI with OPS has really created some interesting original ways of looking at self-growth. And so And so the goal of this call, trying to get an outline, because we generally don't have structure,
right?
With what we're doing, because there's so much to talk about, and there's a lot of complexities with the system, and that we want to start from a perspective of what are some things that we can look at that OPS offers in terms of self-growth, and how can we compare that to the Enneagram. So we're just going to start with what are types in OPS, those of us who have been typed, or, what our working guesses might be, and then turn it over to you in terms of how you discovered OPS and created it, and we can go from there.
Yeah, great.
All right. So my type is already in the intro, but I was shaved a couple months ago. I think when I did the original pod, I thought I might be NITE, which is something we're going to talk about, like sensory versus intuition. But my type is SETE, so an ESFP, with play, consume as my savior animals, and then sleep last. Now, we're going to get into some of these concepts for those of you who are trying what the hell is that? But then let me turn it over to Joseph, who has also been typed. Talk about your Enneagram type and your OPS type.
Yeah, sure. So in Enneagram, listeners know I'm social sexual 4-wing 3 with 6 and 1 fixes. So annoying trash. I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. Actually.
Very judgmental, annoying trash.
Even self-critical, looks like.
I was. Yeah. You guys typed me. You and Shan typed me a few months ago. You're probably like, "Who the fuck is this annoying?"
No, we do
person?
Remember you. Yeah, we do remember you. Yeah.
There. See, yeah, you remember. Yeah. Anyway, it was NEFI, double masculine, consume, play, blast, sleep.
Yeah, right. That's what we got. Yeah.
And then David he's waiting because I mean to get typed you have to be a member of your class for 90 days, and it's clear listening to David that he's on the woo-woo side of NF in terms of those, for listeners, NF is the intuition and the feeling where you just get into sort of abstract woo-woo land. Not sure what his type is going to be, but I'm willing to bet that's what he's going to get. And then John hasn't been typed by y'all either, but we discussed like on that call, what is everyone overdoing? And John overdoes detail. So, there's a very concentrated focus on like what things mean that he's got going on that I think might be TI, SI. That's my working guess as of right now, but
Sure, cool. Yeah.
I guess the first question is kind of like, how did you get into this? How did you discover and create this? And what are y'all doing? What is objective personality?
Yeah, sure. So we got into objective personality very accidentally, kind of not really looking forward. It was more of trying to figure out how to make things work in life, like trying to make our crazy lives that were getting more and more depressed and anxiety and just needing to reach out for self-growth to kind of save ourselves, felt like, so it wasn't like a fun hobby. It was more like, oh my God, I don't want to die. What the hell's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
And then we also were using Myers-Briggs or psychology or personality or anything we could for sales. We had an RC airplane business. And so we had that kind of aspect to it of using personality, Myers-Briggs, just whatever we could find on the internet, the early internet days. I mean, all the way back to like 2004 and stuff. There wasn't a whole lot online back then. But we were using it just for self-growth and for sales. And then at some point in time, there was a really good Vox video that came out. I forget what year. It might have been like 2013 or 15 or something like that. But they're just talking about how the Myers-Briggs is not scientific and stuff like that. And we're like, that's interesting because we're enjoying it. We're getting some uses out of it. We seem to have our types pretty well figured out, and we're using it to some degree in sales. And so it just kind of got us thinking, like, all right, so is this stuff scientific, and are we able to track it in any way, shape, or form? So we didn't really take that too seriously, nor was that like a huge priority of like trying to get some scientific tracking with personality. But it was just kind of in the back of our heads, And so we took a run at it. We did like kind of this. We put each other in separate rooms and went like, hey, our friend or this person on YouTube, what type do you think they are? So we started typing separately to try and get some type of, we just call it like non-Ouija board. It's like when everybody is in the same room with each other, like, hey, what type do you think this person is? We all kind of throw out our guesses, and like the group kind of aligns at a type, a lot of kind of back and forth. So we were typing that way and not really realizing how much we were influencing each other when we're typing Sally or whatever, And so we thought we were pretty good at typing. And then once you put us in separate rooms and trying to type a celebrity or whatever, we found how much we very much were not. Like just like the Vox video and science has been saying for a lot of decades, if you try and track Myers-Briggs in any way, shape, or form in some type of scientific setting, it doesn't really hold water all that well. So that was discouraging and surprising because we thought we were, how hard this can be, how hard could this be? So then we kind of just left it alone for a while. But I just kept thinking, no, I swear to God, we're tracking stuff in sales. Like we were getting some objectivity, some objective measurement in sales when we would do the sales campaigns toward ISTJs, which was our target customer group, and RC airplanes, guys building. These are like retired guys from the military that are like building, I don't want to call them toys because they're more complicated than toys, but they're building like, thousands of dollars worth of radio controlled models that they paint very detailed.
Right.
And so it's a very specific, like not everybody does that. Like why would you spend so much money and so much time and detail to control this little plane in the sky? Like, when you get to know all these guys on the forum, like there's a lot of psychological drivers there. Like why is somebody getting out their stress through controlling these little physical models,
Right.
And so that matched up very well with ISTJ. Now there's other guys, the tribe gets large enough, and here comes the ENFJs and here comes the INTJs, and they want to be special. And, you get the other people sprinkled in there, but largely it was ISTJs, And they all had the same, cop mustache, and they would all write the same, and they would like write in all capitals and like make their colors all any like demon any different. They'd all like have Volkswagen bugs with tie-dye colors with their demon NE coming out, and they'd all argue with each other of which glue is better than the other, you know. And
Yeah.
so it felt like, it started to feel like we were getting trolled. Like, okay, I swear this is the same guy. Like, you know. And so that's what kept us coming back. And then just to kind of speed up the story, we then started to take it a little bit more seriously of like, okay, I swear to God, there's something here. Let's try and track this more. And so we went to like science, like if there is something scientific here, what do you do? And they're like, oh, you got to like define your terms better. And we're like, okay, that was really hard because what the hell is NE? What's SI? Like, how do you define that? You know? And so that took a long time. When we finally overlapped it with Tony Robbins' human needs, with Tony Robbins, he's got the 4 human needs, and we overlapped that with Carl Jung's 8 functions, which kind of breaks into 4 as well. That's when we got an overlap. And so you kind of got a cross check. So if you are suspecting somebody is savior SI, then they also should be savior control with the human needs of savior control. So now you could get, you know, like in school, like.
And wait, what does that mean? Like, can you just briefly, I mean, this is one of the things we're going to get into, so you might as well, but what does control as a human need mean if someone has that as a savior?
Yeah, it's like, it's just, everybody has it, right? Everybody has that's what fucks everybody off. Is they're like, I have control. It's like, yeah, no shit. We all have savior control. We all have control, but it's like, what is obsessively wrecking the other one? What are you doing so much that you're not doing the other one enough? You know,
Right,
like the way I like, here comes a me story. The way that I feel my savior control is like, you know, when you're a kid, you go to like camp or you go skiing with everybody, and like you're out for like a week or so. And it's like after about a day or so, the savior control is like, you know, I just want to get back to the cabin. I just want to get back to the cozy spot. I want to get back to the known. And we all feel that way. Like sometimes it'll be at the end of the day. But it's like that guy who's like, no, I don't want to go explore the next run. I don't want to go out and drink tonight. I don't want to, you know, I don't want to go do something new. I found something really cozy here. And we all love that feeling of like, let me come back to my cozy spot.
Yeah.
But imagine if you just like lived there and like your life was rotting because you weren't ever going out to an extreme. And even all your buddies are like, dude, get out every once in a while. Like that's what like an overgrowth of control looks like, you know?
And that's happening like, you know, even conceptually in the way people think, you're saying.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's leaking out. If you go pull 10 people from the street and you start talking to them, they all seem the same. Like it's hard to tell who's who, but like live with them for a year. Like it's like, you know, you're walking here comes some more analogies. You're walking in the desert and this person, the left foot is like slightly bigger than the right one. You don't notice it till like mile 100.
Right.
You realize you went in a big giant circle. So it's like, we talk about life pile, you know, because everyone's like, they said this word, therefore they are this type. Like, dude, like, what is the void they're causing in the tribe? If you lived with this person for a year and you're now going to hit them over the head with a frying pan, what are you screaming from the bottom of your soul that's driving you nuts this person is doing?
Right.
Are they way over controlling everything? Or are they so chaotic they won't narrow down at all? And by the end of a year, I'm just kind of using that as a overshooting example. Like your body knows, oh my God, this person is a controlling ass and needs to take in new. You know,
and this is something I forgot before, just to let people know what your type is in OPS. We're gonna get into your Enneagram type later, but just so people know, you're talking about yourself as a control freak, but your type is
the worst one. It's like I'm a selfish, controlling INTJ. It's INTJ Myers-Briggs, but then NIFI. So I have the self above tribe, you know, with the I'll do the same control, but it'll be abstract, and then self above tribe. So I'm FI versus TE, you know, a little bit different than a standard Myers-Briggs type. Same with yours, you know, jumping that second function.
Mm-hmm. So anybody who's got thoughts, questions?
I want to, hi Dave, I'm John.
Hey John.
I need to understand, I don't know much about Myers-Briggs nor OPS, but I need to understand why ISTJs need radio AC planes.
Right? I know.
I have to know this.
So what I've seen from like becoming really good friends with a lot of these guys and seeing how much the human needs have so much in common. So it's like NI versus NE. It's like there's a lot of common there in the function or the guessing or the intuition, but I feel like there's more in common with NI and SI, where the human need of like, hey, I kind of want to I want to run back to my cozy spot. And the NI is a little bit more abstract. Like I just need my cozy blanket and a whiteboard and my future plans of someday I'll be awesome, right? But the SI is like, that's good. I just want to express that a little bit more practical, a little bit more physical. So what I would see with these guys is like their marriages have died years ago, and it's just a horrible relationship, and they're disgruntled at the government, and their boss fucks them over, and they're just feeling like the world is picking on them, and there's so much chaos everywhere. Like this is one area where they could feel that sense of control in their life. And these guys didn't even like flying the plane. They would build them, and then they'd be too afraid to fly them. But it was like,
that's amazing.
It was an expression of, I can't control anything in my life, but I can feel like I have control right here.
Interesting.
And the reason I think John might have SI as a savior, I mean, this is a recent insight for me, is I was editing and listening to the Egypt episode, and I can relate as a sensory type of just like the factual nature of something like the Egyptian, the pyramids. But I was recognizing, but this is different. I don't know why, why is this? It's hitting me very differently. And part of it is just what John is marveling at is the level of sensory control in being able to construct something that incredible. And so the details of what that represents. And so like the pyramids could be like an SI, wet dream. And that's my guess. That's my hypothesis of what was going on there with John's obsession with Egypt. Is like
right, because you just get like all of those blocks perfectly fitting together that have lasted thousands of years.
And there's a history behind it, that the lineage of putting together something like that intentionally, and some other SI saviors like Elon Musk, who build rockets and things like that.
Right. Yeah, the pyramids would be a good example of SI, where it's physically controlling and stacking something in the environment, literally blocks in this case. Doesn't mean the guy had SI, probably did, but that's what SI looks like,
Yeah, I mean, I can go on my whole thing, but for me, it's like that it was to represent this like sense of the nothing, or the something coming out of the nothing, right? Like the logos, and that they decided to represent that in physical form and not just keep it as a philosophy.
Right. Yeah. I totally relate to that. I feel like me as a savior NF, it's like, I feel like that's what, as I peacock and show off my demons, I'm like, that's what I want to do. I want to take this abstract emotional thing, and how can I get it into concrete somehow before I die,
Right.
And like David, who we think might actually be probably similar type as you, he does a similar control thing conceptually, where he discovered a thing called he mapped the Enneagram instincts to something called the Bhava chakra. And I thought it was an interesting example of NI control, because it seems like you mapped the Jung's 8 functions to Tony Robbins' human needs and created, OPS out of that. And something that happens with, whenever we're doing calls with David is like he has a way of always relating anything we're talking about back to his Bhava chakra connection with the instincts.
Yeah, right.
It's always coming back to the same thing.
Yeah, it reminds me of chess. Right. That's really cool.
So yeah, I guess you've already kind of begun to touch on that, but like the human needs, and to sort of go into how there's a mistyping thing that happens in MBTI communities and even happens in the Enneagram, and what we try to emphasize with what we're doing is that there are structural differences between the types. And so, not to say, I feel like I'm an intuitive person, so I must be, and my savior function must be intuition, but there's like the human needs, outline a structure that if you can tap into that, then you can actually start to really see that type in action. So if you could get into like, you talked about control, but, what are the other human needs? And, because I think that would be really helpful to people to really understand the core of what you're doing with OPS.
Yeah, sure. So it's like, it unfolds into just a giant mess of way too much. But if you're really to break it down to its simplest binary coins, it really is just observing and deciding. And so observing has 2 coins, control and chaos. And then deciding has 2 coins, self and tribe. And then that kind of splits to, thinking and feeling kind of branches off down the decider rabbit hole. And sensory and intuition goes down the observing rabbit hole and stuff. But really, the biggest thing we see is the observing and the deciding. And so, like for example, the way we look at it is like, okay, if somebody's coming over to your house, it's like and they're gonna, like, we had a guy come over today at the new place. He's installing blinds, and it's like, I don't really care what Enneagram wing he is or what their sexual modality is. It's like, okay, somebody's coming over my house. What is their life story going to be about? What kind of tornado is whirling around them? Are they going to be, if they hang out too long, are they going to start hijacking the conversation and talk about tribe drama? Or are they going to start talking about aliens and the government and the news and conspiracies, observer stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And really, when you look at it that way, when we're videotyping people, that's really the first thing we're looking for, is that you get people talking long enough and they're gonna go down one of those two roads, period. And there's nothing else that people talk about. Now, they'll talk about it in a million different ways, but they're either, the observers are in one corner trying to figure out the missing information, who stole my cheese, what the government's going to do next, RC airplanes, inflation, something to do with that, because they have like a treaty, a truce of, I can't have too much drama with the people because I need them to help me solve my biggest fear, and that is this missing information. I'm on the lost path. I'm on the wrong pathway. What's happening next? I need my security. I need my freedom. I'm feeling controlled. I'm feeling trapped. Something to do with that, right? And then the decider conversation is totally different. They'll be like, yeah, you're on the wrong pathway. Don't worry, you'll figure it out. Yeah, your computer needs an update. Don't worry about it. Yeah, the government, they're always doing fucking something. Who cares? So they have a truce with like, I'm not allowed to feel too freaked out about control chaos. That'll sort itself out because judgment. Well, what about the other guy? What do you mean by that? Are they going to kill me off? Am I way too egotistical? Oh my God, I suck. I'm the worst. Wait, no, I'm not the worst. I'm actually the best right now. No, wait, I'm the worst. No, he's better than me. This, and then it goes down the people train. Then it just kind of unfolds of different types of stories on top of that. So we see that's what people are. We're all really trying to process in some way, shape, or form. And it's not like, oh yeah, I kind of do that. Like, no. This is like what people's lives are about. This is like how and why you can predict what's the person going to do a year from now, 10 years from now. Like watching my brother who's an observer. It's like, okay, he's only, now that he's 40, it's kind of been predicting him for 10 or 15 years now. As an EP, he's only gotten worse when it comes to the fear of the government and all the rest of that stuff. And my two decider brothers, they're fine with all the chaos in the world, but they're feeling more of, the judgment and the tribe and all the rest of that stuff. So it's not like it goes away. It's not like you shake out of it. It's not like you had some event when you were in college that made you this way. It's like, no, these are our life-defining pathways. Is, are we try to process observations, or are we try to process something to do with people,
Okay, so I'm an observer. David probably is an observer. Dave, you are an observer, and Joseph is also an observer. John is the one I'm not sure about if he's an observer or decider. So what would you say are some distinctions that maybe, I don't want to say just type John now, but in terms of like what
type me.
Yeah. Just like what, because let's say he's SITI as a savior. I mean, not sure if he's TI. I mean, of course, it could be something else, but let's just go with TI and SI. How would you figure out if he was a decider and observer?
Yeah, so it's like, how you and I, as double deciders or single observers, we'll have the same feelings as everybody else, where we'll feel like, okay, there's times where, oh shit, I was getting way too cocky or way too arrogant, and now I got pie on my face. I'm getting humbled. God, I wasn't as good as I thought I was. So we'll feel that. Or then there'll be times where we're just like, fuck, man, I was such a bitch. I was just going along with everybody's bullshit. I didn't really want to do this, but everybody else seemed like they had a great idea, and I didn't want to, they're better than me, so you're feeling that, one way or another. And then you'll kick your own ass when you get home, and you'll be able to realize that, and that'll hurt, and you'll feel bad about it. But then, you check the news, and now you got a bigger problem because we're afraid of the thing or whatever,
Yeah.
So it's like, it seems to be that we all have the same fears. We all have the same everything. It's just, where is your cilantro wiring? Like, some people are genetically wired. This is a stupid NI analogy. Like, some people are wired to cilantro freaks them out, and some people it doesn't. It's just a complete genetic wiring. Like 23andMe, they've been able to track that. Or like scratching fingernails on a chalkboard. Some people it bothers, some people it doesn't. Not that anybody really likes that, but some people it like absolutely triggers their fight or flight. Like, if you had a sandwich in my ear, I want to throw something through a fucking window. It's like tied to my freak out wiring, and that's a real just genetic disorder that some people have, some people don't, right? So with the deciders, it's like they'll also go through all the same tribe bullshit we all do, but rather than just like shaking it off and going, man, that sucked, it like burrows into the nervous system and becomes the problem in life, not a problem in life, you know?
Yeah.
So the feeling of, you know, if John's an IP, it's going to be more of like, you know, there'll be like 5 or 6 days. I don't know what the time frame will be, but let's say 5 or 6 days. Say there's like a week or a month tidal wave, you know, a rotation. So it'll be like, there'll be a period of time, a few days, a couple of weeks where it's like, hey, I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, I've got this figured out. Yeah, I'm doing really good, man. This other guy, these chumps, they don't know what the hell's going on. I'm definitely going to be the best at this. So there'll be kind of like a climbing, right? And then something will happen. It might even be nothing that'll happen. Those are the worst, right? As you hate it when you wake up feeling depressed and like nothing bad happens, so you don't even know what to point it at, you know? But like it's usually a timing thing. That's what we've learned to track. So all of a sudden, in a very predictable amount of time, a week, 2 weeks, triggered off by some bullshit event. It's more of the chemicals on a pattern. Then it'll crash and be like, oh, I really suck. I'm horrible. I feel real bad. Now what the IPs do though is they won't necessarily usually show that because they're afraid of how they're viewed from the tribe, you know, and so then they'll kind of go away for a couple of days and you won't hear from them because they're now having really intense crashes and feeling of I'm not good enough and insecurity. And now they're having like an EJ swing, you know, and then if it's FE at the bottom, man, that's really hard because now you're getting all these insecure emotions out of nowhere. You're not used to these bad emotions. They don't make any logical sense, you know, that's a fucking wild tidal wave. And then it just kind of, you know, gets out of the bloodstream a few days later, and then they're back up the mountain of feeling good until they're feeling too good, and then it crashes over again, you know.
I think John could be a decider, but I'm not sure, and I just want to, you know, try to understand what decider is because I don't think any of us have as much direct experience with it. Right.
Yeah, right. So it's like the IPs, right? We got the EJs and the IJs and the EPs and the IPs. So it's like the IJs I've been able to figure out the most because I'm a goddamn IJ. And then like Batman and Joker chasing each other, I've been able to figure out the EPs really good because they're the opposite. And I get triggered by their bullshit, so they've been easy to see. Shani's an EJ, so I've got a PhD in that shit. And then from there, the IPs were the last ones for us to really figure out. So we've just had a lot of clients over the years where we would just ask them. We're like, hey, dude, like, from the outside, it looks like you got it all together. What's the fucking deal? And they would just tell us like one after another. They just keep telling us like, oh yeah, this is what I'm going through. This is what it feels like. And then when we're getting videos from celebrities and stuff, it's like with these patterns, if you know that story, if you know that's what an IP is going through, you'll see it if you're looking for it. But if you don't know that story, you'll never catch it. You know, they'll leak out something real quick. Like, oh yeah, I had a really bad weekend last weekend. You know, I told everybody fuck off and I went drinking anyways. And like, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, me too, whatever. But you have no idea, like, no, wait, that really was a big deal, you know, what the IPs are going through.
So, okay, Joseph probably wants to jump in here, but can we talk about the typing and the mistyping that goes on and all the drama and the hate that surrounds that? Joseph, you probably have something you want to throw in with that.
Well, you know, one thing that I really liked about OPS when I started to look into it is this idea that typing, I don't think it's really interesting to find a system where you can just find your type in 2 seconds and everybody knows what it is or whatever. Like, it's like, what are you getting from that? And so when I started watching your videos, I realized that you guys were doing a very similar thing to what we were doing, where you are trying to track, like I'm seeing you do things like track people's energy when they're talking about things, you know what I mean? Because we can all talk about everything, but it's like
exactly
how much energy. Yeah, stuff like that like when we give people back their typing and they're saying, oh, you know, like I was a 4 because you just didn't see me talk about how deep I am or whatever. And it's like, no, we're not tracking. You know, at the end of the day, we can kind of tell what your type is within 2 minutes, and then we just have to spend the rest of the video like validating it, like having evidence for it. But it is just tracking these unconscious things, and people really do not like to be told what they are, even though they come to us and say what
I know, right? I know.
And I've seen you guys go through the same things and like complain about it in your videos, which you know, is respectable actually.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So it's like looking back over some of Carl Jung's quotes, I really see how much that guy got raked through the coals for the same kind of thing, you know?
Oh,
Yeah, big time. It's a weird. There's a whole rabbit hole there, but yeah, it's a weird psychological thing. Like I personally believe that like the reason why psychology as an industry hasn't really made much progress, you know, and assuming there's some type of scientific tracking here, or we're on the right path, or you know, whether it's us or you guys or the Big Five or whoever, right? I believe that like why psychology is way behind every other technological field, you know, in the year 2022 is because when humans get close to actually seeing themselves, they're like, never mind, and they turn right around.
Yes,
exactly.
exactly. Yes.
And there is a curiosity. We want to know, like, just seeing, like, that's why we call them demons, man. It's like it looks like there's programs in our mind, and I think as we get older and we get more congruent, is you start to see that you have competing, very opposite bipolar programs inside of your head, and when you're fucking 12, you don't realize that. Everybody around you realizes that, you know, but you don't realize that. As you get hit to be like 40 or whatever, you're like, oh yeah, I really am kind of controlling, and then chaotic, and then selfish, and then kind of a martyr. I kind of do all those things, you know. But so you try and tell somebody that who isn't starting to see that for themselves, and it just gets really triggering. So it's definitely a mind fuck, and that's why our front end disclaimers are so aggressive. God damn, man.
Yeah, you got me wrong typing.
Yeah, I know.
I love that. I love that.
But it works. It works. It slows them down. It slows people down. And so it's like half the people write back. They're like, "Well, you got me wrong, and you know, I guess I'll be on my way." I'm like, "Yeah, good luck to you." And like honestly, man, like most people we see that come through, it's like it's like when we punch people so fucking hard on the front end, it kind of just gets that negativity over with. And we do end up having a lot of quiet positivity slowly over the back end. So a lot of people, if you watch them like on the forums and stuff, a couple months later, some of them kicking and screaming and causing hell as they do it, they start to kind of see after a few months, like, oh shit, I really am doing this, you know?
Yeah, no, I was just agreeing with that. I mean, that cycle happens for us for sure, and you kind of can just wait it out. You know, people are going to come back around. A certain number of people are going to come back around after they sit with something for a couple of months, and they start to realize, you know, maybe it's not so bad that I'm a 6 or a 9 or whatever, and all of that kind of stuff, and then they start to settle in and start to see it, and it kind of opens up a whole new vista once they start to get it and get that these types weren't all these terrible negative things that they thought they were or whatever, or that it includes so much more than they thought it did and so forth.
Right. Which is so much of the point of self-growth, right? Because people go into it, they're like, I want to know what my blind spots are. You're like, yay, okay, great. And then when you start pointing out the blind spots, they're like, whoa, but that's really hard, really painful. I don't like that. But it's like, yeah, if you keep going though, then if you know what your blind spots are, then this weird invisible hand that keeps slapping you in the back of the head, which is actually something that you set in motion, you know, then you end up not feeling like a victim. Because it's like now in my own life, I'm like, oh, I actually can see where all this chaos is coming from, because I'll over control shit so intensely that it creates like a knot in the hose that blows up 6 months later. And then I just blame it on whatever that last thing was, not knowing that I had set that stuff in motion. But to realize that I am actually causing this, you know, like my blind spots are creating a chain of events. It is very hard. I don't know if it was hard for me, it's hard for everybody else to then kind of let go of all the victim stories. Because you're like, wait a minute, because what's really happening as well is like, I broke up with my ex-girlfriend over this. Like I took my roommate to small claims court over this. You know, like I moved across the country over the. Wait, are you saying, you know, like so you like it's a huge it pulls up a huge kind of an ego death of realizing that not all stories. There's definitely some really bad shit out there that's completely not people's faults, you know. But we're talking about the daily bullshit, not like abuse or something like that. You know what I mean? The daily bullshit that we all go through, 90-something%. Like, goddamn, that's a lot of that is the stuff that I've been setting in motion. And then, like, when you say that out loud, you know, depending on the context with the friends you're in, like your roommates from college would be like, we all know that, dude. Of course that's you. And then it's just it's a big traumatizing, feedback loop that definitely takes people a while to get through.
Yeah, and part of the thing that we've learned is, we are doing something pretty rare and controversial in the Enneagram world, which is like saying that types can be observed and identified, and you can make distinctions by watching someone's video and seeing them. The type is something that's happening right now, and then if we can't observe it, then it's not real. So,
right.
And so the people submit videos similar to what you guys are doing. And it's like this process of, hey, you get to be yourself for, 15, 30 minutes. And we, as strangers who don't know you, who understand the system, are just going to assess and give you a result. And it's just been a learning process to see, how, if this is being done right and something is being pointed out that is real, that in a lot of ways that someone has to be willing and ready to actually see that, because if it is true, it's going to pull up a lot of really painful stuff. And a lot of times people are wanting to be affirmed, or they want someone to agree with the type that they think they are. And so this process is really painful. I think we've learned the hard way that we have to create a level of distance so that we're not having to be in the wake of these sort of like really dramatic reactions that people have about us, about just people that don't know them, who are just doing a service.
Yeah, right.
So it's really cool to see, I guess, to see someone else who is approaching personality system from the perspective of typing, because that's how I got into this, and that's kind of what we emphasize with Enneagrammers. That's saying, what's the point if we're not actually talking about accurate types, who has learned to, I guess, set up a certain level of boundaries that discourage people from getting involved with the whole typing process. Like to say, hey, like you should probably not do this unless you're actually ready to see something that might disagree with the way you see yourself.
Right. Yeah, that's what we do. We try and put real heavy disclaimers on the front end of like, hey, you're just signing up for our opinion at this time. We can be wrong. We are wrong at times. This is just what we're looking at from the outside, giving people the kind of wiggle room to kind of do whatever it is that they've already their identity wants to do. Because honestly, like half the people, or probably more than half the people at this point, they do kind of respect our opinion, and they also are ready. Actually, it's actually gotten a lot better. Like I was just typing a couple of people last night, and come to think of it, and let me think. Actually, let me pull it up, see who so I can remember who it was. It was this IP guy, right? Or I believe him to be IP. Shannon hasn't typed him yet, right? Mm-hmm. So I believe him to be an ISFP, double feminine, consume. Blah, 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 sleep last, right? And the guy really did well at narrowing his type down. He's like, double feminine, lead FI, he had his second saver, NE rather than SE or whatever. And so he was seeing himself really, really well. And then he was also telling his life tidal waves, the IP stuff, even though he's a very extrovert, outgoing guy, he was talking about the IP swings, like, and really had his stuff down. But even though the guy was like really saw himself very accurately, he's like, I don't know, this is just my opinion of myself. I'll see what you guys get. Maybe I'm an EJ and I'm upside down or all backwards or whatever. Like he just wasn't being a dick about it. He wasn't like, wanting to fight us about it. He was trying to understand the parts. He was trying to understand himself. And then knowing he might have some of those upside down, he was kind of I'm starting to see people let go of the fucking labels. Like I have to be an INFJ because that's the most popular. Like, would you fucking are you here for that? Like, would you let that shit go? And so I'm seeing more people going, look, I just want to know which side is up. I really don't give a shit what type I am. I'm probably upside down, whatever. So I am seeing that more and more. And that, I think, because I'd say probably more than 60% of people are kind of more going that way now, that the people that do kick and scream and fight kind of get their ass kicked a little bit.
Yes.
That's exactly what's happening.
That's what's happening for us now.
Yeah.
I would say because the first year we did this, it was hellacious. I mean, we were much more involved when we were doing it for free. And because what happens is the people who stick around, who are accurately typed and went through this whole process that you're speaking of, who now can coach people who are having reactions, and we don't have to be involved.
Right.
And so I guess one thing that, for example, with the Enneagram is the most common mistype is people mistyping as 4, because it's just kind of the same thing with MBTI. It's like, I think I'm intuitive, or I think I'm special and unique, and so I must be
Right.
for same bullshit, right? And so that's the most common mistype in the Enneagram, and so we've put a lot of effort into making distinctions around type 4, the common mistypes, to get people to just like, hey, you might not know what the fuck you're talking about. So
you gotta, you gotta poison the well. Be like, man, those 4s, they're bullshitters, and then we'll
Right.
jump.
And so, for example, in this system, because I was like, I have all this experience with typing with the Enneagram, I was like, let me see how quickly I can pick up OPS. I mean, OPS is very complex, and I still made a mistake. I got my functions, the 4 functions, right, but I typed myself thinking that I might be NITE, but I was actually SCTE. And so one of the things
you had audio right as well.
I did have audio. Yeah, I did have some things right, but one of the things I want to get into, because I've seen like kind of the chatter on objective personality groups, that a lot of people are pissed off that you guys type them sensory instead of intuition. And so to get into a little bit, like, for a lot of people who are listening, that seems to be the common dichotomy that they people wanting to be intuition, for example. And so like to get into like what are some useful distinctions that based on the human needs and all that stuff that someone can point to identify themselves as a sensory function user versus an intuition function user. And also I want to say, because all of us on this call, because we all do intuition pretty well, like we come on here, we make connections. So someone might say, "Oh, those guys are all intuition users," and there's a good chance that, John, who's very intuitive, might not be. And so just get into that a little bit.
Totally. So, sensing versus intuition. This has taken me a long time, like thousands of reps. Watching lots of people and really trying to ask, what is the core of sensory and intuition? How would you really define this? Because every time you go to define it, you meet some special fucking rainbow person that is jumping the mold. Even you, Amika, when you came through, we had a girl in training at the time, and we had like 30 people that month, and like she got to yours, and she couldn't type you. She couldn't type. You got crazy hair.
I'll take that as a compliment.
You're doing fucking guru shit. You're talking NF. She's like, I can't get a read on this guy, And we're like, yeah, I know. That's the hard one. But the thing with sensory versus, so what I'm saying is like, you can have Elon Musk that is savior sensory. How the hell do you prove that? You can have Tony Robbin who's savior sensory, Gary Vee. Like, there's so many people that are savior sensory that are far more intuitive than a lot of people that are savior intuitive, because of this bell curve and stuff. But the thing to look for, man, the thing to really look for is that feeling of that we all have, that sensory is obligated to prove it. Sensory is obligated to keep it grounded. Sensory is obligated to make sure you have enough paperwork so you can pass it on to the next guy. Like, so for example, on the emails that you've sent me in the past couple of weeks, like, you're giving me your abstract point, you're telling me the understanding of what's going on, but you're also including a lot of factual information. So for example, when I go to retell the story to Shan, like, hey, we're doing the podcast, this, that, the other thing, I'm not just doing an overview or an analogy, like kind of I'm doing now, just saying this, that, or the other thing. I'm not giving the specifics. I'm just jumping over that. Like, I could go to the email and find the specifics that are grounded and factual and proven and that are there. So the sensory people, for example, this is the most hilarious part of the whole joke, is like, say somebody who's savior sensory, you're like, you got me wrong. I'm intuitive, and here's the facts why. Here's this example, and here's this proof, and here's this shit article off the internet that I think is fucking real because I read it. And they'll just go on and on and on, giving the facts, putting all the data down, giving examples, lots of sensory examples of factual things that have happened. Here are examples why I'm intuitive dominant, because one time my mom said, "What do you want for lunch?" And I already knew what she was going to say. That's a factual story, even though you happen to guess sandwiches and it was sandwiches or whatever the fuck, Now, in intuition, there's like, it's almost like, think about where's your embarrassment, So like, sensory is like, I'm embarrassed if I just tell you blah, 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 trust me, right? Intuitives aren't. Right, Joseph? Intuitives would be like, yeah, it was cool, whatever, man. And then they just walk off and didn't like prove that, didn't give any examples, didn't tell any stories. Because the intuitive is like, I'm just looking around the corner. I'm getting the general idea, the general concept, the general conclusion. and then I'll just, somebody else will come behind me and prove the facts later, So really, it's just that.
Right, or
What's that?
or if you have that sensory demon, you're almost like, when you get into that mode, all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, I have
Right.
to, you know what I mean? Like, I have to do this right, and like your eyes are bulging, and you're like, okay, I have to get every detail in place, But if I'm just having fun, it's just me giving random. I watched my video back after you typed me, and I was laughing because I always type this ENFP. It wasn't really a surprise to me, but I was just like, what the hell am I talking about? Like,
I know.
At one point, I was talking about Christmas morning, and then next I was talking about like space, and I was like, what the hell is that? And I was just having a blast.
With double feminine savers too, so you're like NF hippie on crack. Yeah,
exactly.
So Joseph, what's your because you've talked about the story, I just want you to talk about it here, but just like, what's your impression of understanding of intuition now, knowing that I'm sensory, and let's say David's probably intuition as well. Probably, what are you seeing in terms of what I'm doing and maybe what John is doing versus what you and David are doing?
I don't know about John, but I can say only because I do videos with the two of you guys every week, so I'm like really watching it. But clearly, we all have the ability to do both, and we do both back and forth. And the video, really, what we're doing is this combination of like intuition and sensing. Is I have an intuition, but like, okay, well, we have to prove this and we have to talk about it. But what I find happens is that you end up like David will come in with his thing, like pulling from that net of like these kinds of like webs of ideas that he always has. Not to say that they're the same idea, but it's kind of from this web of like,
David's back.
This grounded,
David box.
but it's an intuition. Yeah, right. And I'm just kind of like, I have like a bag full of like ideas, and I'm just gonna keep throwing them. Some of them are shit, some of them are good, and you will kind of be like listening back and forth, and then taking some of the stuff that we're saying and being like, okay, is this anything?
Right.
And is this make any? Can we? How can I ground this? Or sometimes little things that happen. Like I think I mentioned this. I don't know. It's not the best example, but it's like tiny thing that happened the other day where we were texting, and I don't know. David said something, and you said that seems optimistic, and I said optimism isn't our strong suit, and we said that at the same time. And I thought your comment was sensing. It was just facts, and mine was like, some generalized comment about the nature of optimism between the three of us, So like little things like that'll happen. I don't know if that's even a good example, but obviously, and then I could go into sensing after that, but it's like I'm immediately going to go to some kind of overview analogy first.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. John, what do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, I have no idea. I don't know the system very well. I do think when you talk about observing dominant versus deciding dominant, I do think I'm observing dominant.
Okay.
But I don't know what that implies in terms of this stuff.
Well, I mean, you could say that your interest in Egypt, it's like a thing focus. I'm assuming that other Egyptologists might have a different way of looking at Egypt, and for you, it's kind of like the how all these structures could be put together. And like I've seen drawings and graphs and things that you've been mapping out, mapping out different aspects of Egypt and the structures and how they connect to the stars, and so it does seem like an observer type of obsession.
I mean, to me, my experience, and everybody's whatever got their own filter on their own experience or interpretation, but for me, like Egypt just is an actual like representation of an orientation and perspective that I've always been like fascinated by, that gets that I think something that I think is very real, that gets actually physicalized. It's not just like in my head or in an art piece that I've made for myself. It's like, oh shit, there was like a whole thing to actualize this, and we don't just like, the whole world isn't just a mall, So it's not, I mean, the pyramids are just one thing, but it's just the strong contrast of how dull and dead everything is today versus like having this sense of bringing something alive into being.
Mm-hmm. So, well, I mean, I don't know if Dave, if you have any thoughts on that, if that sways you to one side or the other.
No, it's interesting. Yeah, no, I'd have to know more. Like, I'd have to hear a lot more. Yeah, like the deeper motivations. Like, because it's like you get down to the bottom. Like, say it's like say for like pyramids, for example. So it's like the story of from an observer is the longer the observer talks, the motivations are going to be something about Yeah, the people, whatever. People are crazy back then, they're crazy today. It'll sort itself out. Who cares? People are fine, whatever. Anyways, the lost technology, and they used to have these special moving things, and the aliens came down. So it'll go something down that road if they talk for like an hour, right?
Right.
Or some period of time. If it's a decider thing, a lot of times they'll start with the things. They'll double observe. They'll talk about the technologies and talk about the stones and talk about all the things, but the things are not that triggering. They're like, yeah, there's ancient technology and some of it's lost. Oh well, whatever. But anyways, the civilizations, the way the people connected, the way people loved each other, the culture. Oh, it's so different now. The people back then versus the people today, and culture's going the wrong way or going the right way or something. Now it'll be talking about people.
Huh. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I can see both in John. I'm not sure which one he's overdoing, because I do hear a little bit more of the civilization represents like an orientation to inner life and a connection to the like a cosmic order of things. That it's almost like it represents like a what it means to be a person that Egypt represents, like an orientation to life itself.
Yeah,
seems
yeah.
More about a character. Like it almost represents like an ideal orientation for a person that Egypt represents.
So watch this. Let's say John or whoever's a decider or an IP, whatever. Like, so they're going to be going towards the end destination of I'm trying to solve and settle people, culture, something to do with civilization, etc. Along the way, they'll be double observing and not giving a shit. They'll be in a flow state. 60-40. I'm talking about single deciders in general. They'll be in a flow state where they're observing sensory and intuition in a 60-40 relative balance and not care. So when they're wrong, they're like, oh, I just need to adjust. And so like we keep finding that it's kind of a switcheroo. Like your strengths are usually in an area that you don't give a shit about. So for the IP and the EJ, their strengths are in the double observer. Like, so for example, if I'm watching a fucking documentary on the pyramids, the first thing I'm doing is like, okay, who's this coming from? If it's coming from a goddamn ENTP, I'm like, all right, this is going to be like alien Kool-Aid bullshit. I saw watching something on the news or there's like a side news channel, and it was some ESFPs talking about all these conspiracy. I'm like, oh, here we go. Single observer. Here we go. Falling off a cliff here. So it's like with the IPs, they will double observe and they will be able to research the thing far better than the observers that are actually obsessed about it. But because the observers are obsessed about it, they screw it up. But then they don't screw up the people stuff because they don't care about it.
Okay. See, okay, that's a really good distinction, because it's, I mean, of course we're doing like a weird soft typing of John right now, but I've been trying to figure out like, what is John doing that's different from us? Because we're all social blind and awkwardly doing a podcast, but John has this ability to really focus on the characters and the personalities involved and to highlight that in ways that are surprising for a social blind. And his focus on Egypt does feel like this is a civilization of people who really cared about inner life. But it's very detailed, but it's still kind of like people and character focus in a way that made me think that he could be, TI at the top.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, I had a question because I was really intrigued by the animals, and it seems like a very difficult thing to have come up with. And like like it was just seemed like a really brilliant and original thing. These sort of cross functions coming up with this whole other entity. And so you were mentioning the Tony Robbins 4 needs. Is that somehow related to the animals, or if not, like where did the animals come from?
Yeah, so the animals have ended up being one of the most significant things in tracking self-growth. So let me kind of work backwards and roundabout, and then it'll kind of end at where we came up with them and stuff. But it's like we've been able to actually define what an introverted person is or an extroverted person is based from the animals. We weren't able to do it from the functions or the letters or the types or any of that stuff. But like when we're actually talking with somebody that is going through it, they're going through hell and they're kind of hitting that rock bottom of the hero's journey, and they're like, okay, I'm starting to see I'm fucking my life up. How do I get out of this? Like the dashboard that we find, like when we're seeing people that are making it out of hell, is they somehow become aware of their last function and their last animal. Because like those two are where we as humans are causing such overwhelming voids and blame and demonic negative energy to, that is what is fucking our life off. Because whatever we have in the middle, we got a 60-40 balance. Whatever we have at the top, we're overdoing. Whatever we have at the bottom, the last function and the last animal, that is where we just go satanically ape shit, and we just won't go near it. And that's where the massive void and pile up. So for example, like say for an IJ, for example, like for me, for example, it's like I got my last function is SE, and then my last animal is consume. So I'm like doubling up on the same problem. And that's not true for all types. Some types kind of stagger their last function and their last animals. They kind of get to spread out their problems a little bit, and some people double down in one area, you know? So it's like for me, it's like my type will be like, oh, I'm just going to stick to what I know. I don't want to OE. I don't want to take in new. I don't want to improvise. I don't want to jump around. I don't want to wait and see. I don't want to plan as I go. So that's the OE. Fuck that. I don't want to SE either. Don't bother me with the facts. So, you know, my last function can go to hell. And then the consume, that's kind of a different deal. It's like, I don't want to know about myself. I don't want to know that my hair is sticking up in the back. I don't want to know that I'm wearing the same pants that I wore since high school. I don't want to know that my car has a flat tire. I don't want to take in, I don't want to like rest and have a movie time for myself or treat myself to a root beer, like the last animal, you know? So with everybody, we find where their life's problems, they're reoccurring life problems, right? So let me define that. You know, you're 40 and it's the same old problem you've had since you were a kid. It's happening everywhere you go. It's coming from the last function and it's coming from the last animal. And so like with Shani, she's blast last. So like she'll have the negative emotions of the FI at the bottom, the demon identity, the savior TE, the tribes picking on me, all that. But then you combo that with last, and now she's cauldroning all that. She's holding that all in. Other people of her type that are, Amika, you'd be kind of in this example. You're close to her type because they don't have blast last.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I need to go talk this out.
Yeah.
You know, now, Amika, you're not going to go on a long walk by yourself for 2 hours in the dark with no input. And, you know, that's not going to come natural or normal anyways, you know, but it's like, now you'll go shoot yourself with the sleep energy, have a problem there, but not with the blast, but Shani does. So it's like wherever the last animal is, we just forget to do it. We won't do it, you know? So getting some, like for Shani and I, we found that like, you know, if we start there, like, okay, I'm having a reoccurring problem. My life's melting down. I'm getting those frustrating feelings that I'm a victim. I'm feeling depressed and anxiety. Oh, let me check. Oh, look at that. I'm not doing my last demon and I'm not doing my last animal, you know? So the animals have been extremely significant for self-growth, getting out of the tidal waves, getting out of Groundhog's Day, getting out of the same old problems. The sexuals have not, Joseph's double masculine, double, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't really, your life problems don't really come from the sexual energies compared to the last animal and the last function, you know? But yeah, the way we came about finding the animals was we were continuing to try to what we call objectively type, where we're in separate rooms and we're getting the same type as each other. And without the animals, that it only got us to 32 types. So kind of working backwards, like say the ops code really is genetic, and say there really is 512 personality types in the genetic code. Like, so say that's the non-movable, that's the genetic truth. Again, you know, play along. Say that's the non-movable truth, and you got to work backwards. So if you only had 16, but there's really 512, you got a lot of blurry, vague. You know, you're not going to get a lot of consistency with your partner because you don't have the precision. You know, like say there's 512 car types, but all you know is like 4x4, Corolla, and, you know, sedan. Like, you don't really have the precision of like, oh no, that's an F-150 Raptor. You know, get very, very, the more specific you can get, the more you can get the same as your partner. So we were stalling out as far as being able to get the same type as each other, you know, more than 60% or whatever. So we kept digging around for, are there other aspects of this code that are following the same kind of math, the same kind of binary goes in a Punnett square, you know, high school science type format? And if so, could we find it? And so we just would have a whiteboard, and we honestly just tried hundreds of combinations. And the animal theory was one of those, and was one of the dumbest ones, and it happened to make it longer than 24 hours, which was rare because we would come up with a theory, and then we would run it. We're like, okay, so let's see what neighbor Jill is, and we would both work out what type we thought she was, and if we came up with a wildly different type, we would throw that theory away. It doesn't seem to be working. But if we came up with, oh, I think Jill is Savior Blast. What did you get? No, I also think Jill is Savior Blast. Like, okay, let's try another one, right? And so then the theory would kind of last over to the next day. So it was just a random idea that we came up with, and it happened to work, and we were able to continue to unfold the math from it, but it was completely just a random, stupid idea.
So it was just like, you were just like, oh, what if we just pair different functions together? And that was just one of, oh, interesting.
Yeah. We watched some monkey documentaries. We watched, that was brain breaking. That's what we called monkey naps, which now we understand what those were, like listening to Andrew Huberman and a couple other people that are talking about like, cortisol and dopamine and different chemicals in your brain. But yeah, we had watched a bunch of monkey documentaries, and it was like tearing our brain. Like we would like, it was so traumatizing. We were watching these as we were going through this, because we were seeing like, oh God, we're like, the chimps have the same function patterns as humans, or another way to look at it is we have the same function patterns as them. My life, just another rung of like, my life is not a special rainbow as I thought it was. We are very predictable and repeatable and animalistic and aggressive and dark, just the dark kind of primal energy. But you could watch a documentary like, cool, but like when that, versus your soul saw that, and you can't ever unsee that, your brain kind of tears and it knocks you out. You got to go sleep, even though we just got up a couple hours ago. But anyways, we were watching a bunch of this shit, and so watching the monkeys, how they would go in these 4 different stations. They would get up in the morning and they would go scavenge for food, and they would do consume, and some monkeys, that was their favorite time of the day. It was like a kindergarten doing rotations. And then they would go play, and then in the afternoon they would get aggressive, and they'd start like mating and like beating each other and yelling at each other, and like we couldn't figure out that one. That ended up being Blast. And then at the very end they'd come back around, they'd come back to camp, and they would do sleep. And there were some monkeys, like every single station, there was always a superstar of each station. And so there was this one monkey, this motherfucker had to be, SITI. He's the one that like would have the little stone, like 2 stones, and he like had an assembly line where he had collected all these nuts, or somebody else did, or however he had all these nuts, and he would just like create an assembly line, like crack the nuts and organize them, and didn't really eat them. He was just like the guy at the RC plane. Like the way that he got out of his anxiety was at the end of the day, he like rocked the sleep department and just repetitively did the same thing. And I'm like, fuck, man. Right. And there was one chimp that was like pregnant, and it really fucked with Shan, because that chimp was I know this sounds crazy, but Shani really related to that chimp, where that chimp would like do everything it could during the day to make everybody else happy, right? Do all the DE, and then it's like, did I earn my time that I can run away and hide and have my me time? Yeah. And so like the sleep one really fucked with me, and the play one really fucked with Shan, and then we just start kind of mapping it out. We're like, what if that's sleep? What if that's 2 introverted functions working together? Like, like how is that not? Like the guy's sitting there completely like, I don't care about anyone else, so DI, not DE, and I obsessively get comfort from doing the routine. Like, what else do you call that? And so we just, once you map out one, that's what's so great about the mathematical code, is like, as soon as you get the math for sleep, you're like, oh, the opposites play, right? Double introverted, double extroverted, and then you have the 2 in the middle that are staggered, consume and blast, half introverted, half extroverted, etc. So we would discover like one, and then it would, like, okay, well, the math says there'd be 4. So what would those be? And so real quick, it's like, if you're onto something, it hangs together. And if you're not, it falls apart.